Yep, live.
Hello, my name is Gautam Suryan. I'm a chemical engineering major from the University of California, Berkeley, and with great pleasure and honor, I'll be your moderator for your forum today. As an individual coming from a really strong science background, I realized that the science world and the business world is pretty disjointed. And to be real honest, there are thousands of really good ideas, innovations out there, but not many make it big in the market. It takes a person who understands the commercial application of science to bridge the gap between both worlds. Hence, it is very important for undergraduates like us to be equipped with entrepreneurship skills in this modern age. We, the International Council of Malaysian Scholars and Associations, would like to welcome everyone for the first of the North America Speaker Series, where we invite top professionals to the first top professionals from a variety of industries to give an insightful webinar on their successful career towards various industries in which they have pursued. Any questions can be commented below the live stream with your name and university. Our talk today would be about entrepreneurship. To address this topic, we have for you Mr. Chen Chow. If this is your first time seeing him, your first impression would probably be he seems like a really cuddly and warm personality. But behind this cute, cuddly, and warm personality lies a big visionary. So just a small introduction about Mr. Chen Chow. Mr. Chen Chow, also known as CC, is a graduate of the prestigious Cornell University and an Eisenhower Fellow. The Eisenhower Fellow is a scholarship named after the famous President of the United States of America, and he was selected among 25 fellows in the Southeast Asia Regional Program under Eisenhower Fellowships for those aged between 32 and 45. His career as a management consultant in Accenture and a product manager at JobStreet. Mr. Chen Chow later joined Groupon and moved up the ranks from Chief Operating Officer, CEO for Malaysia and Taiwan in 2012 to Regional Operations Director for Groupon Asia Pacific. His journey into entrepreneurship became established as he co-founded K-Fit, which gives you access to the best studios, gyms, spas, and salons in your city. And he then founded Fave, which is now Southeast Asia's leading online to offline e-commerce market leader. Discounted offers on awesome things to eat, to do, to see, and experience in your city. And for people who are active in the US app scenes like me, he's also one of the founding fathers of US apps. So talk about a resume that can win you any job out there. He's literally a man who's been there, done that, almost anything they have dreamt of. So after reading his accomplishments, I'm sure everyone needs a minute to take in the magnitude of the person that we have for you in this forum. And while the participants gather their thoughts and get their breath back, I would like to remind all the participants to drop your questions alongside your name and your university so that we can pose those questions to Mr. Chen Chow later. So with the rules set, I'm pretty sure everyone is ready to hear what Mr. Chen Chow has to say. Without further ado, let the forum begin. So, sir, first and foremost, like a true consultant, let's break down the topic to a simpler, digestible bits for all our participants out there. Entrepreneurship as a whole.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Gautam. Yeah, really appreciate all your kind words. Yeah, hi everyone from all US and all around the world. Yeah, thanks a lot, ICMS, for inviting me for this session. Yeah, so I think for entrepreneurship, I think there's many ways to define it, but I think the way we're looking at it is using innovative way to really solve a problem. I think it's a lot of time focusing on the problem rather than focusing on solutions. So what are the things that you really keep you up at night? Let's say, for example, at Fave, what we really try to solve is to help local businesses succeed. Like today, you go to a shopping mall, you look at restaurants, every empty seat is a loss of potential income for the restaurant owners. If you go to a spa, where every masseuse that's sitting there that not doing anything is a loss of income. How do you bridge this gap towards what the consumer needs? And how do you connect that dot better? It's just like an airline business where the plane takes off with 10, 20 less people. Each of these things would affect the profitability of the business or even sustainability of the business. I think I will look at entrepreneurship is really go deep and really understand the problem, solve a problem that you yourself really care about.
Okay, well said. So it's all about being process oriented rather than the results. Like thinking about what the problem is about and breaking it down to simpler pieces and trying to solve them on a daily basis. Okay, and my next question is, what makes an entrepreneur an entrepreneur? Like, what makes him special or different? Yeah, what makes an entrepreneur an entrepreneur?
Yes, so it's quite interesting. I think like what makes an entrepreneur. So I think an entrepreneur, I think basically defines a person who was really involved in entrepreneurship. And I don't think entrepreneur is a weird breed or very different people. I think each and every one of us can be. I think a lot of us can be an entrepreneur when we are really passionate in solving the things that we really care about. And at the same time, we may not be able, maybe incompetent or maybe and don't have interest to really solve another problem. So I think the entrepreneur is like a lot of times at that moment when we're looking at a problem at hand, how do you care about that? What do you really want to solve? The question to think about is how much you're willing to sacrifice to solve that. Let's say for those of you that who are currently studying, I'm not saying that you should drop out, but maybe if you really care about a problem, like maybe drop out is a way. And let's say like I guess over the night, Mark Zuckerberg just went back to Harvard and delivered his commencement speech. Like 10 plus years, I think 13 years after he dropped out, right? So I think a lot of it is what you really care about. And I think that's where key.
Okay, that's well said. What made your transition from a really stable, successful career in Groupon into a really brave world in the startup world?
Yeah. So I would say that maybe I would say that for Groupon when I first joined, like in Groupon Malaysia, it was quite an entrepreneurship organization. I think like back then Groupon acquired Group Small. So Group Small was an outfit that Joel and Kylie created in Malaysia. And basically from there, when we joined, was a small team operated from a bungalow in Bukit Gasing. And from there, we grew around. And then I think we got opportunities to went around to do a few turnarounds in different businesses in Taiwan, in Southeast Asia, India, Japan, Korea, before I got a chance to look into Asia Pacific. And I think a lot of time thinking about transition, I think one thing that I think many of you guys that who are still young and a lot of opportunities ahead is maybe think about a phrase or hashtag YOLO, right? You only live once. And really go out there and really ask yourself and say, don't ask yourself, what if you do this? What is the thing you lose? Maybe ask yourself, what will you lose if you don't do this? And I think a lot of time is plunging. It's pretty scary. I think from getting a decent salary to not getting anything to really starting from zero, change your lifestyle, go from a very basic, simple lifestyle and really build on it. So the transition is real. And I think for those of you that who wanted to go on entrepreneurship, my suggestion is do some savings so that you don't overnight completely shift your lifestyle. So at least you can live on a bit of the savings and go on it, right? So I think that helps quite a bit. Let's say for myself, I think like had a bit of Groupon shares and over the last couple of years, occasionally sell off a bit of the shares and living on it. So that occasionally I can still go on a quick short breaks, or sometimes if you want to have a good meal, you can still have it. But in general, keep your lifestyle simple, basic, and I think that's key.
I mean, I think those are like really key points. It's important to have a good amount of cushion so that when things get too risky, you have something to fall back on. And also, I think the one thing that we have all realized is you seem like a really simple man, and I guess it's because of your simplicity that it has brought you to a lot of successes in your life. So the world of startup has been extremely competitive. How would you describe as your thought process of thinking of new ideas that started K-Fit and Fave?
Yeah, so I think startup is competitive. I think there's no doubt about it. And I think a lot of times, if there is no competition in what you are doing, that's when you need to worry, not when there is competition. When there's no competition means that maybe there's a blind spot that you didn't realize. Maybe if there's a great idea, and the world today, there are lots of people that who will take advantage of a great idea, people go on it. So I think like you should celebrate when there's a lot of competition, because that really tells you that, okay, you are actually hitting the right spot. And now is how do you outwin the competition, or how do you strive and succeed and build the ecosystem with and against the competition? And I think that's where key. And I think a lot of it boils down to really few things, right? I think one is that I think people is super important. How do you excite? How do you attract? How do you retain your best talent? How do you really bring out the best? Not just attract, retain them, but how do you bring out the best of everyone? How do you really stretch everyone to really deliver the best and really seen people grown? I think like if you're looking at the last few years, I think like definitely seen a lot of people that in our team have really transformed themselves. Let's say UI, who currently leads our Indonesia business. 4 years ago, he joined us from one of the big four as someone with 1 year working experience, did a very basic things. Today, he managed a team of 80 people across Indonesia in a very competitive market, right? And I can continue to give you many other examples in the company where people really steps up and learn, unlearn, and relearn. And I think what is important is like what gets you to a point will not get you to another point. What gets you to succeed in your college life may not get you to succeed in your career or in a startup journey. So I think that's the first point. Go to in competitions, people. People is number one. I think the second, I'll go back to the problems that you try to solve, right? So how are you going to have unfair advantage over others in solving that problem? Unfair advantage maybe behind the people, the experience, the passion, how relate to you. Why do you care so much about this problem? Why are you going to sacrifice your weekends and nights, and when your friends go hang out, parties, you are going to stay in and solving this problem? What is it in it that fire, that light the fire in you, that keep you going on day in, day out? Entrepreneurship will be a tough, long journey. At midnight, a lot of times you'll be still trying to solve that problem. And I think like I'll quote Mark Cheng, the founder of JobStreet. I think he mentioned before that when he started the company in 1997, he thought that he's going to have a lot more free time for coffee. I think he really only get it when you sold the company 2-3 years ago. So it's a long 18 years journey wait for him to really have his freedom of time, right? And so I think that's something to be cognizant about. And I think a lot of time people problem, and I think a lot of time is embrace and learn from the competition, right? So I think, and when I say competition, one could be in the same sector, one could be in other sectors. What does someone else solve this problem? So example, let's say review and ratings. Let's say when we're trying to solve for people that are going for a meal. It's the same way how Airbnb solve review ratings for the travelers, or how Grab or Uber solve for public transportation. And a lot of times learning from the world best and benchmark yourself against world best. How do you really be able to do this in a faster, easier, better way? Let's say example for Fave. Today, we leverage on what Groupon has done and built over the years. And what we couple with is really understanding the local market in Malaysia, Indonesia, Singapore, and different parts of the country, and really understand that. Let's say here when we go to the mall, people go up escalator. And as you go up escalator, within that few seconds, are you able to find what you want? How do you be able to go in? The purchase pattern and shopping pattern is very different as well from market to market. And I think each time when you learn on all these things, and what gets you to a point, and because technology changes so fast, if you don't disrupt yourself, you're going to fail. So I think it's ability and willingness to disrupt your own self is very key as well. And I think finding the things that really 10x, 100x. So you're not thinking about how do you grow 10%, but how do you grow 10 times bigger than today, 100 times bigger than today? And I think that's where the potential is.
So I mean, listening from what you just said, like it is very important to go down to the basics of the problem in hand, to understand the problem to the very depths of it. So, and it would come in very handy in the future to solve the problem. So it's very important to know that we have the problem in hand, right?
Yes, yeah. So I think really understand the problem, but I think a lot of things startup is a journey. I think as you pointed out earlier. So I think it's a lot of time is trial and error. So I think try fast, fail fast, and really iterate. So try it out, works, great. How do you do more? Fail, tweak, change, try again. Fail, tweak, change, try again, and keep on these iterations non-stop. And I think it's really to understand the consumer. And sometimes when you try right now, it works, But after some time, people get used to it, get bored over it. Today's world, especially our Gen Y's, attention span is very short. So what attracts them today may not attract them in 1 month's time. So it's not just like, okay, building it, okay, now, oh yeah, attracts. And then how do you go from there? How do you, and a lot of times if you solve a problem like marketplace, so marketplace problems is where you connect two parts, right? The producer and the consumer. So whether in Airbnb, the host and the traveler, the Grabs, the driver and the passenger. And let's say for us, the business owners or the businesses and the consumers. And it's a chicken and egg problem. When you try to build a startup, if you don't have one side, whether you, if I don't have businesses, consumer not going to come in. But if I don't have consumer, businesses not going to come in. How do you going to build a marketplace that has both sides? How do you reduce the friction? Every single extra click in your app or web, reduce maybe 10, 20, 30, 40% of customers. How do you make it so seamless? How do you make it so easy for everyone to switch, to move, and to scale? And how do you get everyone to be so excited about the thing that you have that they feel that is theirs? And I think that's, and reflect back on all the apps on your phone, all the things that you have been doing, is what are the few ones that the day that you download it, the day that you use it, you will tell all your friends. The day that you automatically go and tell your friends and say, wow, I still remember the day when Facebook started, when I was at Cornell. And I still remember on day one, I think pretty much suddenly 1/3 of the school, or more than that, everyone just signed up Facebook. And at the time it's called thefacebook.com.
Wow.
And it was, there's no wall, there is, most of the features that you have today on Facebook is not even there. There's no like button, there's no news feed. And back then I still remember we used it to find out which room our friends stay, what's the phone number of friends, where the friends will be, because your class schedule is put up on Facebook. So if you look at how Facebook has started, it evolved from there, from a place where you know what time of class you go to Facebook to discuss homework, because every class has a discussion page to discuss the homework, and that is completely evolved. Amazon started selling books, today it's not. Fave started from K-Fit, we're selling fitness, and today fitness is a very small part of our business. And of course, I know that people eat a lot more times than they exercise.
So I mean, like, I think the key takeaway point from what Mr. Chen Chow has just said is the need and the importance of improvising and to evolve along the way, because the product that you produced 6 months ago may not be as useful as it is to today. So it is very important to learn from your mistakes, to keep improving, to keep innovating your idea, so that you can still cater to the needs of your target market at all times. And if you don't do that, like I can say, like Nokia stopped improvising or stopped innovating because they realized that when the smartphone industry came in, they're pretty stagnant in their development. And I think it's pretty important for us to innovate along the way and evolve so that we can cater to the needs of our target market. So this could be a very interesting question to our audience. When you were launching any of your startups, be it K-Fit or Fave, and how did you overcome it?
I think one thing is challenges happens every single day. And I think one of the sayings that we have with the team is that if nothing breaks, means we are not trying to grow fast enough, right? So things break every single day. It is perfectly normal for things to not work. And it is actually that we always strive and focus on solving that. And I think lots of challenges, I think a lot of time is really to understand and solve the root cause of that problem. Really understanding why certain thing happen. And a lot of times it's not good enough to just like, okay, plug a hole, put a plaster, solve it, and then try and then move on. Because a lot of times it's why, what is it? And a lot of time also solving a problem, it could be focusing on the right problem at the right time, right? Because a lot of times you knew there is this deficiency, but at this stage, this is the best solution that you should be doing, whether because of cost constraint, whether because of manpower constraint, whether it's technology constraint, whether speed constraint. And a lot of time it's not about, I think one of the common pitfall I see from startup founders is often is that people try to build way more advanced before they even understand whether the product market fit, whether they really solve the basic problems. So I think a lot of challenge as we build up, I think a lot of time is really understanding the consumer. Right? Let's say when we started K-Fit, we went in with the premise of targeting people who really actively exercise. I think for those of you who are not familiar with K-Fit, so K-Fit is similar like ClassPass in US or UK. So I think like for where people can go on a variety of activities paying a monthly fixed fee. So I think the first challenge there back then was, I think, attract the right target audience. So we thought that, okay, maybe the people that will go on this package will be the people who exercise a lot. And because ClassPass model of K-Fit model, we limit each people to maybe limited 2, 3, 4, 5 times per month for each venue. And basically people, what the selling point is variety. You can go on multiple things. But for the hardcore active people, that may not be what they look for. People want, those active hardcore people actually want to go for one place and exercise every day to build their muscle, to lose weight. And I think it took us a few months before we really did enough focus groups. And I think it's very important as you do a startup journey is to do focus groups, talk to consumer at all time. And I think what we found is that people, no one tell us that they join K-Fit to lose weight. People don't join K-Fit to really build muscle. And what we found was interesting is like a big group where there's a relationship happens, where people actually go dating on using K-Fit. So people like, okay, what do you want to do this weekend? Oh, this weekend, let's go Zumba together and maybe do ballroom together, ballroom dance together. Next weekend, maybe let's do yoga and maybe do CrossFit together. And maybe another weekend, maybe let's go swim and do rock climbing. And another weekend do golf and something else. So that caters to people. So I think a lot of times it's really understanding the market and solve it. And don't assume that you know everything. And I think a lot of it going to the ground, do the basic hard work. And I think in the startup, what we are saying is do the things that's unscalable to find out what is really important and then scale when you find it out.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's well said there by Mr. Chen Chow. I have a question by one of our participants in the forum, and I would like to read it out loud. This is from Lincoln Lee from the University College London, UCL, UK. So his question is, how do you find, inspire, and teach the right people for your team? Also, how much do you have to micromanage in the beginning?
Yeah. So I think good question there, Lincoln. So I think that one is that fine. So I think a lot of times we take a lot of effort to really find the best talent. So I think like talent is very limited. I think it's a lot of time is where and how to get the really, really top-notch talent around the world, right? And I think after you find the talent is how do you inspire them to move the needle to come over? And it's not easy, right? I think we have brought in teams from 20 over countries. How do you inspire someone? Let's say, for example, one of our colleagues, Daniela, who used to be ex-McKinsey from Brazil. How do you inspire her to migrate half across the world to a country called Malaysia and be based here? And I think a lot of time is really going through understanding people. I think people don't care about you until they know that you care about them. To really understand what do people want and whether can you offer them. So I think a lot of time the puzzles came when how do you find and inspire people. And I think once you get the right people on board, I think the rest is how do you keep people motivated, keep people focused on the right problem, right aspects to solve. And I think a lot of time I won't use the word teach because a lot of times we actually don't know best. We aim to hire people who are better than us, smarter than us, hungrier than us. And that's what it is. A people bring A plus people. So if you're always scared of other people better than you, then you are not cut out to be an entrepreneur. Because a lot of time B people will bring C people and the whole thing is just spiral down. So we always need to level up who we bring, what we bring, and how do we really bring it to the next level. And I think is how do you really spend the time to really inspire the people and point people to the right direction. I think is teach people how to fish rather than give people that fish. And I think one very important thing is be always very focused a lot on quality. Do you really instill very high expectation on quality to the people? And I think a lot of time, let's say, for example, people who work with me on data know that I don't accept even one error. I don't accept even one error on number. And a lot of times that's required crazy focus, crazy understanding. Do you really understand the problem? Are you really make sure that the things that you produce is something that you can be proud of? And really, because a lot of decisions are made using those stuff. So how do you really deliver the world best? I think asking yourself, I think for all of you that as you go on, whether to entrepreneurship or to work, is ask yourself, today, if you're not there in the office or not doing what you do, does anyone feel anything? If no one feel anything, you haven't made your presence felt. You haven't really contributed. You have just wasted a day. I think it's really doing things that meaningful, impactful. And I think that's key.
Okay, that's nice. Following up, like he had a second part to his question, and that is, how much do you micromanage in the very beginning of your startup phase?
Yeah, so I think the way we do is deep in, deep out. So I think is that we can go super deep, and then we jump out, and then we let it be, and then align guidelines, and then we jump in again. So I would say that is be prepared to go completely not involved, doing just very one-liner, to really go deep all the way. And I think a lot of time is depend on circumstances, depend on situation, depend on what we need as a company and what the people is and what the situations is. So there are situations where we go super micromanage, super hands-on to work together. There are moments where you just aligning one-liner and then go on it. And I think a lot of things is that how do you go deep and out into it? So be prepared to work on a micro detail, be prepared to roll your sleeve and really doing it. And at certain point, be prepared to let go and focusing on other problems, because there are a lot of times asking yourself where to focus, because there are just so many things that need to be done. And I think prioritization is super, super, super important.
Okay, so this is a question that I just innovated in my mind, and it goes by, if you were to start a startup today and you were to choose a team of 5 people of different majors, what type of majors, what type of people would you choose? And please do justify each one of the people that you choose.
Yeah, so actually I don't care about majors, just to be very open about it.
Okay.
Right. So our CTO is a dropout. So education doesn't matter. Whether you're a CGP of 4.0 or 1.2 is the same. Actually, don't give any bearings on that at all. Right. These days I don't even ask for your CV, because I think a lot of it is really, really about individual. Right. So I think few things that is super critical is, I think one at a basic fundamental is integrity. Do I trust you? Do I think you are someone that's trustable? Because you're going to be involved in many different aspects. Are you someone that is really trustworthy? Integrity. Integrity is one of the very important things. 2, intellectual. And I think when I say intellectual, could be book smart, could be street smart. But I think would I enjoy having this conversation with you to solve a problem? Are you able to value add to solve that problems? What kind of perspective you could put in? Are you adding into the additional different perspective that we don't today have? Right? Are you able to think out of the box? Are you passionate enough to solve the problem? Are you hungry enough to solve that problem? So I think the second part of that, besides integrity, is intellectual. And the third one, I think, is chemistry. So this one is a bit harder to explain. Do I enjoy working with you? Do the team enjoy working with you? Do the team feel empowered, excited working with you, talking to you? Can both feel that you want to work together? So I think a lot of times those integrity, intellectual, and chemistry are the 3 most important elements. And maybe adding on humility. Are you humble enough to learn, unlearn, relearn? What gets you to this point may not get you to the next point. Are you willing to roll your sleeve? Are you willing to hire people who are better than you? Are you willing to learn from others? Are you going to benchmark yourself against world best? Are you going to be really willing to work super hard to solve this? And I think, are you in it for long term? Are you in it to really solve the things? And I think a lot of times these are key. I mean, there are for some roles, yes, there is some technical expectations for certain role, but most of the time, I think a lot of it is these are more fundamental. There are a lot of other things, and of course, there are certain roles that certain behavior characteristics needed. Let's say when you do customer happiness. So when you solve customer problem, patience is something that's very important. Caring is super important. You care about the customers, right? So let's say in terms of customer service, right, we brand it as customer happiness to the team, because the goal of the team is to make people feel happy. And let's say in an industry, most of you have tried to contact call center before. How long do you get a response?
Yeah.
If you try to email or message chat on call center, I shall not name names, but I think many of you have experience where you wait for very long. Our average response on chat is currently sitting at 16 seconds, not 16 minutes, and definitely not 16 hours, 16 seconds. And of course, is it good enough? Maybe not. We need to get to 10 seconds, 5 seconds. And the team knows that we want to get to that so that we can really solve the problem. Because for someone that will face a problem, 16 seconds is still pretty long, right? So a lot of time is different role will require different kind of additional 1 or 2 aptitude. But a lot of this can be learned throughout. Whatever you learn in college will be obsolete or may have already been obsolete. But what it is that, are you constantly learning, developing, benchmarking, seeking mentor from the world best, and really developing yourself? And I think that's much more key. A lot of times when we don't know, I go to Quora and we just search. We ask people, who's the best people that we know of that who can give us some pointers on solving this? And you need to be what we call honey badger. Really just go focus on problem and really focus on solving it.
Okay, just to summarize on what Mr. Chen Chow said, like, I think majors are not pretty important when it comes to forming a good dream team. But what's more important is the soft skills that someone has, and it's something like someone who looks at a problem and is able to apply multiple perspectives and frameworks when they look into a problem. Integrity, and also one of the most important thing is to be as curious as a baby, to learn, relearn, and to keep improving on what they have. And I read this book by Anthony Robbins years ago, and these are a couple of the skills that he actually drawed, and he actually advised every entrepreneur to have. So I think this is one of these are the skills that all of us have to agree on, and it's very important for us to be curious in life. And I have a very question, and this is by Diana Anwar. She's from the University of Chicago. She's the previous president of ICMS. And she's a really nice person, and she's part of really, really funny memes. You got to see that one day. Her question is, considering funding for startups is very limited, especially in Malaysia, how do you differentiate yourself and compete against larger or richer companies?
Okay, yeah. Thanks, Diana, for the question. So I think in terms of funding, I think a lot of times is that it actually operates opposite. If you need money, ask for advice. If you need advice, ask for money, right? So, and I think a lot of time is that whenever you go out there and seek other people's money, you actually, if you have money, you actually want to put in. So I think first time, even before you go and seek for money, ask yourself, today, will you be willing to borrow from your best friends, your family, to put into this business at this juncture of this business? How confident of you that you think that this is the right investment for the person they're going to put in money, right? Because a lot of times fundraising is not just taking other people's money and just waste it. It is a lot about doing the right thing with the money. And I think in terms of building up startup, yes, it's very tough. And I think a lot of time is that really focusing on solving it, building traction, fast growth. I think investors like to show versus tell. And I think a lot of time is being an earlier stage startup, it will be being nimble, being fast. You'll be able to make a decision like at 3 minutes versus 3 days or 30 days, right? Or some bigger company could be 3 months, right? So I think it's how do you be able to solve problem faster? How do you be able to outmaneuver people? How do you be able to outsmart people? How do you really understand the problem? How do you attack at an area that people don't focus on, right? So I think a lot of times is that, and I think it's a lot of times be a big fish in a small pond than in a small fish in a big pond. So I think that is super important. Like, how can you be really there to solve the problem, that be dominant in really solving, be very known for solving a small problem is much, much better than being unknown in solving a big problem. And once you solve a small problem, ask yourself, how do you extend from that problem? And then how do you further extend from that? So whether category-wise, whether geographical, whether business model-wise. So I think it's always start from one. Place your bet on solving one problem. If you can't solve one small problem, you can't solve one big problem. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs make the mistakes of trying to solve everything for everyone. But then a lot of times it's really knowing who is your target audience. Who do you really solve? So let's say example, like when we try to solve the problems for getting food courts to go on digital payment, where you can go and eat at food courts and you no longer need to bring out your wallet. So we work with Hutong in Lot 10 to solve that, right? So one food court. So right now, there's only one food court in the country that you can fully use FavePay. And this was enabled 2 days ago. And we were working with them, going to work with them deeply to really understand and solve that for the consumer. That if we can solve for one food court very well, solving for 10 food courts is easy. Solving for 100 food courts is easy. And the same thing for Gerai. Right? We work with the Gerai next to our office here. They have a bunch of Gerai stalls there. How do you bring them to digital payment? How do you bring up the bandwagon? And again, the same thing, solving with the Gerais in one location. And really understand, go out there, spend your time talking to people. Why don't you use? Why you don't use? What's the problem you face? Let's say example, when we first launched Gerai, right? So for the payment, people at the Gerai, when you pay money, when you buy a lunch of 5 ringgit, 6 ringgit, you're not willing to take your time to key in your credit cards, right? Take the time to really key in your credit cards because you are maybe saving 50 cents, 100 ringgit. But back then when we tried for people when eating at restaurants, when you pay 50 ringgit, you don't mind spending the time. So the trick of this is how to get these people to key in the credit card beforehand, so that when they go there, it's a very fast, smooth process. So I think a lot of it is we were able to solve for the customer on the second usage and onwards, but not the first usage. And then like a few days ago, I got a chance to speak at my Clear conference, which is a conference organized by a subsidiary of Bank Negara. So I think like I still remember telling all the executives there, all the bank CEOs, all the senior central bank people. And the dream is one day people can afford to pay without even bringing out your wallet, right? So so a lot of times getting funding a lot of time as well is two things. One is selling the dream, selling the vision, and I think the second one is proof with your track record of results. What have you achieved, not what you are going to achieve. So I think if you can have both, then you can bring forward.
Yeah, superbly said by Mr. Chen Chow. I think one of the key takeaway points that I took from what he just said, it is very important to solve the problem in hand first, and it's important to start with a smaller scale. And once you have solved it, it's important to extrapolate it to a larger scale. And moving on, there is a follow-up question by Miss Diana. The question is: since ideas aren't capital intensive and easily copied, how do you ensure sustainable growth?
Yeah, so I think idea is worth nothing in startup world, right? So anyone can have idea, anyone can copy. I think in the end, it's execution. How fast do you execute? How fast do you innovate? How fast do you outmaneuver? How fast do you continue to build and continue to change? So I think that is more important. Like all of us have the idea. Let's say example, take ride sharing. All of us know the idea of how ride sharing works, whether Grab, Uber, Lyft, and others. Why don't any of us just go and create one tomorrow, right? They have definitely built a lot of barrier of entry with their scale and everything. So I think a lot of it is really, how do you really going in on it? So don't worry about other people steal your ideas. A lot of time investors also benchmark on who else does this. And a lot of time the reason that they'll fund you is because you are way, way, way faster, hungrier, better in solving the problem than anyone else. So are you the one? A problem that you are the only one trying to solve, likelihood not going to bring you funding. The problem that many people try to solve, and you solve the best way, the fastest way. And true enough, as you find it the better way, people will copy. People will take it and just do lots of barrel and do the same thing. But by the time they copy, how fast have you maneuvered and built a next layer and continuously running, thinking, and a lot of times it's in the details. I still remember talking to Azran from iFlix once, and he was telling me that the button in iFlix was a certain color, I think orange, if I don't remember wrongly, because that brings him another additional X% of conversion. And a lot of time is going down to that detail, how deep that is. And I think that's where it is. And I think for a company as well, I think it's a lot of time invest. I think really being willing to invest to drive it. Let's say example, we are actually going to send 2 of our team members to go Google New York to spend a week there for the design sprint. I think investing in the people to really go out there. And I think it's a lot of times idea can copy, but what people can't copy is the people. Are your people most passionate? Are you yourself leading by example, being most passionate? I think that's key.
Okay, this is a question that I think the ICMS panel planned out. For our audiences today, what do you think should be the most necessary skills, be it programming, designing, etc., that an aspiring entrepreneur should gain, especially in today's world?
Maybe I'm going to tell the answer again for this will also be, there's no specific. I think it's the skills that's most important to you is the skills that you are super good at, that you're really, really passionate about. So let's say programming. Is programming skills important? Yes. But if you don't have interest in programming, you are not great at programming, don't do that. Right? It's a lot of times survival of the fittest. Are you going to be, when no one's supervising you, no one asks you to do anything? Let's say take programming. When no one forced you to do programming, you don't need to submit any assignment. You don't need to think about it. You don't have, would you be willing to spend your Saturday night programming versus hanging out with your friends? If your answer is yes, then programming is one way that to go in. But if the answer is no, I hated programming, I only do programming because I thought this is giving you good money, then don't do it, because you're not going to be better than everyone else. And then ask yourself, is your skill sets going to be good in building that? Are you going to be a fast learner? Do you care about it? Do you love that logical thinking? Because all of us has potential, all of us has skills. A lot of time is unleash what we're good at. I think one concept I'm going to share here is that focus on your strength and make it world best. Forget about your weakness. Don't worry about it. All of us have weakness. But what is most important is, what are you really, really, really good at? In corporate, yes, when they hire, they usually do checklists. You need to be quite okay in many things. So they would not hire you if you are bad in 1, 2 things. In fast growth startup, a lot of times is we hire extreme. We hire people who are really, really, really good at something. And you can have 5 big weaknesses, and that's perfectly fine. But you need to be really good at something. When we think about these things, these skill sets, these attributes, are you the best in it? And if you're not the best in it, then maybe you're not the right person for this. So I think a lot of it is that, right? Today, talent is global. We hire from 20 over countries so far for a company that has 300 people. So a lot of it is really, how are you competing against the people the rest of the world? So in terms of skill sets, any skill sets will work, but how good you are. And I think be prepared to learn, unlearn, relearn as well. Let's say programming language. It changed. Back then people were doing web programming. Today is on mobile, and within mobile there are different ways. And I think constantly learning, constantly providing platform. And let's say like for Office, we often create platform or enable, not to create, enable our team to create platform. So example, like yesterday, our team invite and work with Amazon Web Services to have the Amazon Web Services meet up in our office to talk about various ways of technology, solving technical problem, building up Ruby on the Rails user group. I think there's a programming called Elixir. I don't know programming language or programming techniques, but people were focusing on it. And I think in each part of it, how passionate you are in that, and that is most important.
Okay, being an associate consultant myself in a consulting club in Berkeley, I've learned a lot through consultancy. And through our chat, I've realized that you have used a lot of management consultancy terms like the target market, breaking a big problem to smaller buckets and trying to simplifying the problem. So how big of a role has management consultancy played in your successes in your life?
Yeah, so I think like as looking at it, I think management consultant, I think there are a few strengths that works well for startup, but there are also a few question marks. So I think over the years, we've hired many management consultants. Some work perfectly great, some would not work. And I think what management consultant has is, I think, working through tough problems, solving through tight deadline, working through multiple stakeholders. I think a lot of those skill sets, working very hard and pretty smart. A lot of those things echoes, a lot of things are crucial. I think what consultants need to unlearn from consulting is, a lot of time for consulting, the job ends when you do finish the slides. The job ends when you finish making the presentation.
Yeah.
In a startup, there's no ending point. It's a continuous journey. And it's not about making some. So for consulting, your goal is to please your target audience, which is a few people. In a startup, the goal is not to please a few people. You're not here to please your boss. I think, like, when, let's say for example, we are not here to take yes people. We celebrate people who fight against us. We celebrate people who really care about the consumer, businesses, and really solving that problem. And I think a lot of time that differentiates between what the consultant, and a lot of consultants are not able to do that. A lot of consultants are still thinking on just solving problems. And being a consultant, you solve many different problems and you learn along the way. In a startup, you need to really focus on the same problem but solving it different ways and keep on innovating from there. So there's similarity, but then there is also differences. And there's no right or wrong. And let's say in consultancy, there's a specific career ladder. In startups, it could be overnight you became rise to the top, or maybe you may never rise, right? And at that time, position is not even important. A lot of time is how good are you in solving that problem.
Okay. Well said, Mr. Chen Chow. So I have a question by Jacob Yoon from the University of Manchester, UK. His question is, I think it's pretty Fave specific. It goes by, what's the most important thing you're working on right now, and how are you making it happen?
Yeah, thanks, Jacob, for the question. So I think, like, most important thing, I think for us, we are now at a stage where maybe give me a couple minutes to share a bit of history of what we have evolved. So we left Groupon in late March 2015, so about 2 years ago. So we launched K-Fit in April 2015. We expanded across to 8 countries, 12 cities within the first 4-5 months. And then we built on it till 2016, when our 1-year non-competes against Groupon ended. Extend into beauty wellness category. August 2016, last year, we acquired Groupon Indonesia. November, we acquired Groupon Malaysia. And this year, March, we acquired Groupon Singapore. Young startup that is 1 year old, acquired 3 bigger size company. And without using any financial consultant or staff, I think we learned along the way. And basically from there, by this year May, within 2 months after we acquired Groupon Singapore, we fully rebrand, migrate, and merge into one platform called Fave. So the Fave brand is now 3 months old. So we now works with about 15,000 local businesses. We work with about 7 million consumers so far, and a team of 300 people across 14 cities. So that's where we get to. And I think what most important for us is really be able to really help local businesses succeed. I think, as you know, retail today is affected. I think a lot of malls are struggling. I was reading an article yesterday in Singapore where quite a number of malls are facing problems. In KL itself, you'll see that many malls don't have traffic. And I think the question is, how can we really helping these people succeed? And when we say helping business succeed, it's not just helping the business owner to succeed. So I think a lot of times understand different stakeholders, whether business owner, whether for those that's larger chain, whether the sales marketing people succeed. How do you help the branch outlet person to succeed? How do you help the frontline to succeed? Do you really understand about their issue challenge to make their life easier? And I think a lot of it is, I think for the last 8-9 months, we have focused a lot on solving problems for consumer. I think for now, it's really to solve the problem for businesses, and also solve how do we elevate the productivity using technology and tools for our own people. So I think that will be where it is. I think it will be a lot of time is maybe very important as well as to know where to focus and where not to focus.
Okay, I mean, hearing from what you said, I feel like Fave has a lot to offer to our community in Malaysia. And me, behalf of ICMS, would like to wish you all the best. I think you're doing a great job, and you'll achieve a lot of things in life. I have a couple of questions left. If you had an advice for your 20-year-old self, what would it be? How would you have lived your life? Any different? And what kind of skills or courses or things would you have tried to learn back then?
Okay, good. Yeah. First of all, thanks a lot for the wishes from ICMS. I think same best wishes to ICMS as well. In the last few years, I think ICMS came up maybe 5-10 years ago, and I definitely see ICMS has really transformed, right? I think MPPC Malaysia Public Policy Competition, the ICMS hold, I think I've been here for a few years. I think definitely seen great passion in the team to solving it. And I think a lot of time the advice to, let's say, a 20-year-old, I think a lot of it is, I think, be yourself. I think it's really go out there and do the things that you really want to do, want to learn. I think don't let a ceiling, an artificial ceiling stops you. You can be world best, and you are world best. Take away the word just, not yet, everything out of a dictionary. You can be world best. There's nothing differentiate you today against the world best people. And a lot of it is self-confident and be humble enough to continuously learn. And I think it's focusing on what you really care about, passionate about, and go out and do it, right? I think, let's say, while in college, in uni, make full use of your time there. Asking yourself, are you making your life worthwhile? Are you learning from the world best? And are you really learning from whether you're the speakers that came to places, whether you're lecturers, professors, university staff, or more importantly, from your fellow friends, right? So I think like Mark Zuckerberg this morning in his commencement speech as well, he quoted the name of one of his classmates. He said that back then, no one wanted to talk to him, no one to hang out with him. There's this guy who spent the time with him. And today this guy runs big part of Facebook, right? And you could be the next guy the same thing. And or maybe the other way, you could be the guy that provide for all your people. Let's say going out to build entrepreneurship. I think one advice is, do not start a startup with people who are very similar with you. You need to have similar in trust. You need to have similarity in belief system, but choose different skill sets, passion, and strength. Let's say Joel and myself, we are very opposite, very different. He is the visionary, charismatic person. He can sell things to people. He can portray and seeing a vision 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. He can see a big picture, can connect the dots, looking at a big picture. Whereas for me, I'm the boring person that will basically put my heads down and looking into solving things one at a time in the details, knowing within the weeds and trying to tweak one thing at a time, knowing which small little problem that we should focus more, which things need to tweak, which thing need to go and build upon. And a lot of times when Joel's excitement ends, that's when my excitement starts, that's when it's built enough and then driving through to the end. So I think a lot of times, let's say example in fundraising, Joe's will be go out there to wow and basically convince the investors to say, yes, I do. I agree to invest in you. And that's I didn't really get involved that much before that stage. And after that stage, then I'll take over and basically get them till where they really put in money into the company, working through all the details. So I think a lot of it is finding people that were different. And I think a lot of times when we in discussions, he's always thinking long term, I always thinking current. And I think a lot of times differences will clash, but I think a lot of time is trust, doing the best and knowing what each other's strength is. And a lot of time, you need both the future and current to connect that dot. Being fully current will not bring us to where we need to get to. Being fully future, people may not be able to relate. So I think a lot of time is that. And I think it's how do we connect that dot. And I think as you build up your startup, I think a lot of time is that. I think there's a very highly likelihood if one day you go do a startup, you'll be with people that you have spent a lot of time with. And college is one of the best time to really know. Let's say, ask yourself today, among all the hundreds of people, thousands of people, today many of you have thousands of Facebook friends, people that you have spent in college, pre-U, in uni, in high school, who are the people that you would be willing and you enjoy spending all your time together to solve a problem together? People that you're going to stick with you for many, many years. I think Anthony from Grab yesterday, he spoke about Quilling, right? His co-founder. And they have spent so many hours solving problems together. And really, really, that's what you need to find.
Okay, I have one final question, Mr. Chen Chow, and it's by Ayman Azwar Rahman from Temple University. I think it's a really good question to wrap things up. His question goes by, in your observation, what do you think of the current startup landscape in Malaysia, and are there any areas for aspiring entrepreneurs to look at in Malaysia?
Yes, I think the startup scene in Malaysia is just starting. I think that there are quite a bunch of startups in the play. And let's say myself, I'm also an active angel investors, so I've invested in quite a number of the startup as well. So like, and I think why I personally invested in a lot of those startups as well is a way for me to work together and learn together with the best entrepreneurs, right? So and a lot of time, each of those problems enable us to learn and share and really make ourselves sharper and building on it. And so I think in terms of startup landscape is definitely building up. Of course, there's lots of challenge. I'm not going to tell you that everything is fantastic. I think a lot of it is really building a fast growth and yet sustainable startups or businesses that really solve the problem for your target audience. Are you really building something that's solving a problem? Are you building something that is growing virally? Are you building something that's sustainable? This means that your cost of acquiring a customer is actually significantly less than the lifetime value of the customer, which also means that you really have a positive unit economics in every transaction or in overall business. So I think a lot of it is that, but I think it's also a very cooperative environment. Let's say in KL, we have this group called Unicroche, basically combining unicorn and cockroach. So Warren Liao, formerly Magic, now with 123 RF, he started this group. And there are 256 people in this group right now, consisting of a bunch of veterans in those that were built in a Web 1.0, 2.0 days, and we're very happy, willing to spend time to guiding the younger ones of us, people that were built together. And I know that any problem that I face in startup, we can just ping that question there. Within a couple minutes, we will get the answer from people. And the same thing, vice versa, people able to help. So I think the landscape is pretty cooperative, supportive. I think that people are friends, even though competitors, right? So, and I think a lot of it is, when you talk about it, is another startup that solves the same problem, even though they're competing, a lot of time is for both to succeed to enable to bring a real shift. Let's say, for example, for now, let's say we look at F&B market that we are focusing on. 90+% of the transactions of when people eat 2 to 3 times a day, right? Most of it is still spent on cash and credit card at the counter. It is still nothing digital. So any digital initiatives would help drive people towards going online. So I think that's where it is. And I think for people that who aspire to do this is, I think, really think about, let's say you look at Malaysia. What are problems that you really want to solve? What are problems that you really care about? That you think that people around you, whether yourself, your family, your friends, people that a segment of that you're opportunity to mingle with, hang out with, and you feel that they face this problem, and you feel that you have this strong urge, calling that you really want to solve this problem. And if you find that, then that is the best way, right? And that problem could mean solving for artists, could mean solving for general consumers, could mean solving for small businesses, big businesses, marketeers, HR, or any segment. Or could be Gen Y, or could be babies, or anything. In the end, is how much you care about the problem. What it is, because it's a long run. Don't do a startup because you think that you're going to get your fame. Don't think you want to get your lots of money, time. You're not going to get any of this. I think like Anthony was talking about, like when he found his wife, at that time he has no money, no time, right? And the end is really at that time. And I think the friendship that you make as during you building the startup, during a tough time, that's when you really find out who are your real friends. Who are the ones that are with you when you're struggling, versus when you succeed, there'll be lots of people going after you. But when you're struggling, who are there with you? And I think vice versa. When your friends are struggling, are you there with them? Are you supporting them? Or are you just ditching them? Or worst case, are you putting even more problems for them? So I think a lot of it is that. And I think go with it. And I think of the few keywords that I mentioned earlier. I think integrity, super important. Be super, always think about it. You can do 100 great things. You break the integrity, you break it. Intellectual, I think how do you be able to really solve the problem better than people? And I think intellectuals is really think of the problem, be able to really solve it, whether book smart or street smart. And a lot of times it's a combination of both. And I think the third one is do this with people you have chemistry, you have trust with, and stay humble, stay hungry, stay foolish.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Chen Chow. I think that's a wrap. Speaking on behalf of ICMS, we want to thank you for spending time with us to share your insights about entrepreneurship. Keep inspiring students like us, like me, to achieve great things. It's people like you that we look up to. It's people like you that drive us to achieve bigger things in life. And it's people like you that motivate us to make the world a better place. So keep being the game changer and inspiration Malaysia needs. Keep fighting. I think Fave, I can see a lot of good things Fave can do to our community. You're doing a great job. Take care. God bless you. And thank you very much to all participants of the forum. We really appreciate all your questions. It's your questions and your participation that the forum. It was a pleasure to be your moderator for today. Hope you guys have a great day. Take care. God bless you. Thank you, Mr. Chen Chow.
Yeah, Carlton, thanks a lot. Really appreciate this. And I think the same thing, wish all the best to Carlton, you, your ICMS committee, plus all the audience out there. I think really go out there and achieve that. And I think if any of you feel free to contact me via Facebook, whether my email chenchow@gmail.com, and if you know anyone who live in Malaysia, Indonesia, Singapore, feel free to encourage them to try out Fave. Let me know any feedback. I think we're constantly learning on it and try to understand. If you haven't tried Fave before, you can use a promo code. I'm going to just basically share it here. The promo code is Fave Chen Chow, FAVECHENCHOW, and you're entitled you for a good discount for the first purchase. So all the best, live to the best, and hopefully you will be successful. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Chen Chow. Thank you.